this is Steven. It's been a while that I did some reviews, so I'm finally back to continue my coverage. So today I intend to talk to you about some of the newcomers in my collection of He-Man classics. I mean, Masters of the Universe classics. So there is roughly 3 new arrivals that were not seen on the previous videos, but I do believe I did mention them, that they were on their way in my video where I showed you all my He-Man Classics figures up close and personal. So this time around I'm going to be talking about Despara, or also known as Adora. That's her other persona when she was possessed by Horde Prime. And the other fellows I'm going to talk about is the Rotar and Twistoid 2-pack. So let's get the ball rolling with Despara, or Adora, whichever name you prefer to call her by. So here she is. As you can tell right from the start, she looks pretty much like Hordak, just a female version. And she comes with several accessories. Now the only one accessory I do not have here to show is her other head, because she comes with 2 heads. One of them being this one right here, which is the better one of the 2. The second head is practically her human face, or Adora's face, with very short hair and small tattoos on her face. That other head is nothing special really, and I do not like to use it on the display, so I keep it away with all the other extra heads I got with all the other figures. So I display her with this one, because this one looks more menacing, and for one thing, I simply do not like the fact that this is Adora. I don't like that one bit. I didn't like that idea even when it was introduced, because I thought back in the cartoon days she was already possessed once by the Horde. It's kind of ridiculous to go and do it to her once more. I don't agree with that idea. So the way I did it is simply put this other head of hers and pretend that this is simply not Adora. This is just another character from the Horde Empire who serves together with Hordak. That's the way I sort of treat it in my storylines or on my display. Anyway, she comes with this bottle stuff. Now, these wings on the side kind of resemble, at least a little bit, the wings on She-Ra's helmet, sort of. Although I'm pretty sure that's not what they're meant to represent. But other than that, I do not recall, other than the DC comics where she was prominently shown, Despara, I mean, where she was prominently shown, where probably I did not read those comics, but I assume that's where she actually has this kind of battle stuff. She also comes with 2 identical swords, such as these, and they can be stored. Obviously they can be put in her hands, but they can be stored right at the back of her here, both of them, one here and one here. And of course she can hold them in her hands, as you can see. Now there is one thing that's not good about this particular figure. 2 things, come to think of it. First of all, her hands are very gummy hands, in the sense that, okay, they're made of, well, not quite gummy, but almost. The grip on the swords and the stuff is very loose. So the weapons, as you can see, don't stay very well in her hand. They're extremely loose. So what I did is simply leave this see-through elastic. I left it there instead of removing it, for her to be even able to hold on to her swords. I cannot show you the little elastic, but all the classics figures come with these little see-through clear plastic bands. So I simply left it there. Otherwise she cannot even hold it. It will fall immediately out of her hand. The grip is not molded well on the hand, so that's why these weapons don't really stay put. As you can tell, even this sword is unable to stay in her hand at all. No matter how you pose it, it's still gonna completely fall out. So that's an annoying feature about this figure, very much so annoying. But if you can repair it with a little plastic band, then of course it will work fine. Now the stuff itself seems to be able to stay in, but even if you touch it just a little bit, it will immediately fall out. So it's not done well. It's not done well, definitely. The accessories don't really stay firm. The stuff will stay at least a little bit firmer, but as I already showed you, if you just touch it, it will just fall right out. But if you leave it like this, then it will stay. Aside from that, the only other thing that I kind of find a bit irritating is when you're switching the heads. Now, what do I mean by that? There is, as you probably know, going back to Tila figure from the very early wave of the He-Man classics, all the females in the line have a very tiny peg when you pop off the head. And then, of course, when you want to switch the heads or put the same head back, that peg is so small that if you exert too much force on it, the peg will just snap. That's the stories I heard. I am very lucky I didn't have any such things happen, and I sincerely hope it never does, because I cannot replace my figures. I am not like some collectors who are able to double or triple their figures. I cannot do that. I can only have one of each, and I'm even lucky if I can have that much. So I would give word to the wise, you guys pay attention if you're switching heads on this figure or any female figure in the classics line, starting with the first release of Tila. That will be an ever-present problem that, as I said, the pegs are so small, so if you try to exert force by pressing the head onto that peg will most certainly snap. So that's an ever-present problem with the female figures. Now, I was very lucky that because Despara here comes with her human head attached. I of course wanted to display her with this one. I do not want to display her with the human one. So I did pop that head off, and very cautiously, took me a while to pop this head on, because this head would not easily pop onto that peg. It took a while, a bit of a struggle to do it, but I couldn't exert force for the reason I already stated why. So what I had to do is to simply try very slowly to try and see if I can somehow pop the head on, and I succeeded in the end after some struggle. So you guys keep that in mind. Other than that, this figure has, of course, as I already said, a removable head. The cape is removable and it's made of hard rubber, and she has articulation like most of the other figures do in this line. What else? She only shows up in the DC comics that are published since about 2012, 2013 onwards. That's where she had appearance in her own story, or how she came to be and so forth. However, she does have an appearance in the mini comics, about 2 issues of mini comics in the classics line, where her story is more or less the same, how she came to be. And she looks pretty much the same in both comics, meaning in the mini comic and in the DC comic. She looks exactly the same, meaning like this, like just a female version of Hordak. So she never existed in any of the other incarnations. She never existed in the Filmation series, and her figure never existed before at all, up until now, that she was an exclusive figure in the final wave of the classics, and that's roughly about it about her. Not much else, but she does go well on display, so she's not such a bad figure, if only they were able to fix this stupid problem of her hands not holding the weapons properly. Now, of course, there is one other smaller problem that could be irritating to many of you. Her human head, meaning the Adora head, has a problem of wonky eyes. Now, for those of you who don't really know what's that wonky eyes issue practically dates back to the idea that some of the female figures in the classics line have at least one or both eyes painted in such a way that they look cross-eyed, or they look like one eye or both eyes are looking to the left or to the right, or they're looking toward the nose. So that can be an extremely irritating feature, and obviously not so simple to fix whatsoever. So many people usually try to return their figures and ask for a replacement. But of course it's so difficult to ask for a replacement when you don't really know that other figure will it come with the corrected eyes or not. So that can be a bit of a hassle. I can say that my Adora head, meaning the secondary head, does have that problem on one of the eyes, but it's not so painfully obvious, so I decided to just disregard it, and besides I do not really care to display that head anyway, so it doesn't bother me much whatsoever. But I do understand that those people who can find that extremely irritating, I can absolutely understand how they feel. So anyway, enough about Despara for now. Let's put her over here. Let's move on to the Rotar and Twistoid 2-pack. So here we go. Let's start with Rotar. Rotar and Twistoid are practically the characters who date back to the vintage line, and they had appearances in some of the comic books back in the day in the 80s. They never showed up in any of the cartoon series, but they are known characters, however. Rotar here is a heroic warrior, and as the story goes of his origin, he may have been an actual regular royal guard soldier, but in a battle he managed to lose the use of his legs. So men-at-arms fixed him to have a sort of a rotating part that goes on the bottom instead of the legs. Now, here Mattel has included an actual set of legs, human legs for both characters. Well, human legs for Rotar here and the robotic legs for Twistoid, so that you can display them in two ways. So this is one way to display Rotar here. He comes with this same weapon that he had as a vintage toy, so it's a sort of a double weapon that has a mace and an axe, and he comes with his attachments to create him in his rotating mode, so that he can be displayed in more than one way. So this is the bottom piece where he would be attached right in the middle and displayed that way. And then of course another interesting feature about this piece, because it's the same one that existed with the vintage toy, now there is only one major difference. This one now has a handle here. Now that handle is to practically try and use this enormous thing as an actual gear sword for the figure. So as you can see, he can hold it as an enormous gear sword. So that's kind of neat. And of course, these gears can move. At least when you do it like this, then they will move. So that's kind of neat, to sort of mimic the idea that they can rotate. Now of course he also comes with these two pieces that also existed with the vintage toy. I'll show you how these work. Now this piece right here is the rotating one that the original Rotar comes with. The original one had no human legs. So this one right here, the rotating feature does not work, so it's just a piece of plastic, because they were not willing to go and simply mimic the whole thing all the way. So I'll just show you how this works, at least on Rotar. I'll explain why I cannot do it for Twistoid when we get to him. So what we do, we just pop it off, and there is a hole here in the legs, so it works pretty much the same way as the King is. You just remove the torso from the legs, and there is this little peg at the bottom. So what you do then, you get the rotating piece right here, and then you just look at the shape of it inside, and then you pop it right in, like so. So it would be roughly like this. And then you pop it in, and whoops, sometimes you need to put a bit of pressure so that it pops properly. So there we go. You heard a click in there. So this is how he looks now in his vintage form, as a little rotating guy. Now of course you can then put him to be displayed like this. That's a second mode, like that. Or the third mode is just a moment. Let me see, how did that go? Lord, where was I? Well, I sort of display them like this, I guess, but of course that's not the original way to do it. So there is a way like this, with the rotating gears, but of course that's not the proper way, so let me just try and remember how this goes. I did not display it in a different way in a while, so let's just see. Anyway, before I continue with that, I'll just have to figure it out. There is that third mode. I just didn't show it properly when he's standing on the gears, but I'll have to figure that one out. I wanted to just go back to the figure here and also mention that in the old days the figure could practically rotate when you just sort of drag it along a straight surface, and then he would spin on things such as his rotating gears. Now, of course, the only other thing I wanted to mention is that when you turn the head around, the helmet itself looks like another face, or even a robotic face. So one can easily just turn it around and display him like that. Now, going back to the idea of switching him back, what you really have to do is just pop the bottom part off, like so. So we just remove that, and then if you want to display him with his legs, just push it a little bit, and there you have it. He's back with his human legs. The idea is exactly the same what I have shown you here in regards to the Twistoid, but there is one little problem with the Twistoid, which I will mention in a minute. So anyway, the head is removable, and he has articulation. At least when he's in this form, he has the typical articulation as all the other figures. And I believe the armor is removable, although I didn't really try. But then again, maybe it isn't, so I would say no, because it seems that the armor itself feels pretty hard when you try it. It's not sort of soft and gummy like most of the other armors. So yeah, I would say the armor cannot probably be removed, but the head can, and the articulation we already covered. So yeah, that would be as far as the Twistoid here goes. I'm sorry, not Twistoid, Rotar. What am I talking about? I keep mixing their names sometimes. I do not have a vintage Rotar, so I won't be able to show you how almost exactly the same they really are. I do have a vintage Twistoid, but he's lacking all the accessories, and I keep him in a display. But there is no difference between that Twistoid and this one. They're pretty much exactly the same, except for the only difference being the robotic legs. So here is the Twistoid, the fellow I'm talking about. He came packaged together with Rotar, and he comes exactly with the pretty much same accessories, except the weapon being different. His weapon is more like a motorized sickle, or an electronic sickle, as you can see. And he looks more like a cyborg or a robot. Now, in this new biography, it's stated that he was invented by Skeletor to counteract Rotar, and that when he was destroyed in an ultimate battleground, that his mind was transferred and he was created into a vehicle called Roton, which is that enormous vehicle. I honestly don't really see the point of that, and the story doesn't make a whole lot of sense that he becomes a vehicle, but okay, let's just, I guess, keep it at that. He has a normal articulation that you would expect in the figures, and he comes with the robotic legs, and these particular legs are pretty much the same ones that were used for, let's say, Trapjaw in the past. And the idea is he pretty much works the same way as Rotar. You pop him off, which I won't do at this point in time. You pop him off and separate the legs, and then of course you pop him onto the piece that's a rotating piece right there that has a hole. Now, the reason why I don't like to separate him is the fact that Twistoid, at least my Twistoid, and I heard some other collectors as well, has a problem. Now, what is this problem? The problem is that once you pop his body part in here, meaning his upper torso, it's so difficult to separate him and put him back on the legs. It's so difficult to separate him from this piece that it's practically, you're risking a great deal that you will break the figure or you will break the peg inside. That problem is an extremely annoying one, so I'm really worried to actually pop him back into this thing. And I find it extremely irritating that once you finally got this 2-pack that you've been waiting for so long and trying for so long, if you didn't get it back in the day when it was offered as an exclusive, as a convention exclusive, now that I finally got it, now I have a problem doing the body change parts because of that stupid reason that if you force it, it will break. And why is it so difficult to separate it? I honestly don't know. The peg ends up fitting a little bit too well in here, so that when you try to separate it, you're pretty much risking breaking your figure altogether. And then if you cannot replace it like the way I cannot, then you're pretty much stuck to display him in only one mode. So between the two modes, I just decided to display him like this, to simply display him with the robotic legs, and that's the best I can do at this time. He also comes with his vintage weapons, meaning the rotating circle that comes with these swinging axes, battle axes, and of course he comes with the same pieces in an orange color, just like Rotar's. So here you go, that's the one, and then you would put it like this, and of course his body would be up here, and you would also attach these pieces right here and just pop them right in. It just needs a bit of force to push it in. Of course, I don't recommend tremendous force unless you really have to. And always be careful with these things because they could easily break, as it was already stated before. And as my bad luck would have it, you do need to put a bit of force into this after all, in this particular piece. Anyway, the whole point is to just try and attach it like that and display it in that way. And the only other thing I can say is that as I stated before, these guys came as an exclusive and they were only recently issued one more time at the Mattel store. So yeah, that would be pretty much it as far as the coverage of these three go. I'm still lacking a few figures, but those are not that important. The most important ones I would like to find is the Montana and one of the girls whose name I forget now, Entrapta. I don't have any of the Filmation figures, but maybe, just maybe, I might be able to find some if I'm lucky, because they're extremely expensive at this point in time and very difficult to come by. So yeah, anyway, I do appreciate you guys having this video. I do apologize for a bit of a gap since the last review, but anyway, I do appreciate you watching this, and if you like what you see, please do subscribe. So thanks, I appreciate your time. Bye.